Students have vowed to continue their protests in an effort to shut down universities today. Several universities and colleges across the country had no lectures yesterday, and at least one institution, that is the University of KwaZulu-Natal, has suspended lectures for the rest of the week. Students countrywide are demanding that those who are in debt be allowed to register and that historical debt be cancelled. A student was shot and wounded and several others arrested during clashes between protesting students and police in Johannesburg. The South African Police Service, however, says it's confident that none of its members that were deployed in Braamfontein in Johannesburg yesterday fired any shots during the students' protests. This despite a video making the rounds on social media showing a female who was allegedly shot and wounded during the protests. The police denial comes after the arrest of 4 police officials by IPID on Monday in connection with the death of Mthokozisi Ndumba. The 4 officers are expected to appear in court on Wednesday. The students that barricaded the entrance to Nelson Mandela University yesterday, joining hands with other students for the nationwide shutdown, have stopped the protest today. Nelson Mandela University says a series of meetings were held during the course of the day yesterday with leaders of the protesting student formations and ultimately the Student Representative Council. Emanating from these fruitful engagements, agreement was reached on a number of issues relating to the ongoing national discussions around student funding. Our reporter Lerato Fekisi has more.
We are at Nelson Mandela University, and the scenes that we are seeing today very much different to what we saw yesterday when the students barricaded the entrance to North and South Campus. As you can see, it is now business as usual, people making their way in and out of the university. And this is because yesterday management sat down with leaders from various political parties, and it seems as if there was a consensus that was reached. By joining me this afternoon to speak more exactly how the meeting was and what the outcomes of those meetings were is NMU spokesperson Zandile Mbambela. Zandile, let's just first talk about the meeting. The students came out very hopeful. That was a fruitful meeting. What transpired from that meeting?
Thank you, Lerato. Well, you know, as a principal in the university, you know, engagement with our stakeholders and chief of which is our students is always very important to us in terms of understanding, you know, what some of these grievances are and trying to work on these issues, you know, before they even become, you know, external issues. So yesterday was no exception. Of course, you know, we as management, you know, met with the protesting student formations and with the SRC ultimately, and you know, a number of things were able to be articulated as they've been set in motion, you know, over the past weekend.
And what we actually see today obviously is a more peaceful situation than we saw yesterday. So obviously there was some bargains that were reached. One of the issues that they had when we were speaking to them yesterday was an issue of financing in terms of NSFAS. But I know that even then there are good stories to tell.
Indeed, Lerato. I think, you know, flowing from the minister's announcement of Cabinet's decision to increase NSFAS funding last week, you know, it kind of enabled the university, you know, upon receiving some of these funded lists from NSFAS to be able to clear students, you know, to proceed with registration. So since then, we've had more than 18,000 students that have been cleared for registration, and we'll continue to be loading, you know, the statuses as those lists come and, you know, are matched accordingly. With first-time entering students, which I think was one of the biggest bones of contention because, you know, NSFAS could not confirm the funding eligibility for them. We received those lists as well for about 7,501 students who have now also been cleared for registration.
And then also top of the agenda of the protest that's currently taking place in other parts of the country is the issue of clearance of historical debt, and I think that's the one thing that students are all asking for. Even with that, the NMU has gone forward and done some provision and also put things in place to address this issue.
Indeed, Lerato. I think as a university, since 2016 rather, we have had a series of, you know, financial concessions that we've made available to students because we do believe, you know, as the institution that no academically deserving student should be left out of the system simply by not being able to afford higher education. Also, in doing so, we've also had to be mindful, you know, of the financial sustainability of the university as well. So one of those concessions has been to allow students with debt to register, sign and acknowledge to carry over their debt, sign an acknowledgement of debt form, and be able to register without paying the down payment exemption, and then that affords them time to pay off the fees and the debt in the course of the year. So previously the concession was on the basis that the debt does not exceed the cost of the last semester, but a decision was taken to be able to accommodate students in that aspect of the criteria does not apply anymore. So if you've got historic debt, you can be able to be cleared for registration after signing that acknowledgement of debt form.
Zandi, students are also asking to return back to campus, especially students that stay in far-lying areas where connectivity is such an issue. Just take us through exactly now how academic activity is going to take place on campus, who's going to start off, when are you going to start off, and when do you expect to resume academic activity, whether on and also off campus?
All right. Well, for this academic year, we're poised for a sort of staggered start to the academic year. So for first-year students, this week in particular, academic activities will include the continuation of the orientation program, where we are acclimatizing students to university life, and in particular, to the online learning activities and the mask-to-mask activities that they will be partaking in. So, formal academic activities will start to come into effect from the coming week onwards. And then for returning students, an agreement was reached that this week be used for planning purposes, and again for the more formal academic activities to begin from the week of the 23rd of March.
Nelson Mandela, who's a spokesperson Nelson Mandela University, saying the reason why we are seeing a more peaceful university is that some type of agreement was reached with the students. Number one, she says that in terms of funding, about 18,000 students have now received their funding. 7,100 new applications have also been given their funding. She says that also in terms of historic debt, they've put measures in place for students to still return to school with the debt, but also paid off over some time. She says that as a university, what's more important is that, yes, they want academic activity to go back to usual, but also they want to make sure that all issues pertaining to students, their allowances, the funding, all that is cleared out before they come back to campus. She is excited, she is hopeful that this year, although might have a few hiccups because of the pandemic, but soon they are hoping that academic activity will start on the 23rd of March.
The Johannesburg Metro Police have increased deployment in and around the central business district as students prepare for another day of protest. Last week, scores of students from WITS and the University of Johannesburg took to the streets to protest the financial exclusion of some learners. Students are also demanding the scrapping of historical debt. Well, for more on this, we're going to cross now to Hasina Gori, who's been covering the protest. Thank you very much for joining us. Hasina, what's happening where you are?
Good afternoon. We at the Kingsway campus in Auckland Park outside the University of Johannesburg, where the situation has been relatively calm this morning, a very stark contrast from the scenes that we saw yesterday at the same time here at Auckland Park. Students are currently on campus at Maribeng building. They are monitoring the situation as well, but also gaining momentum with the students in the area. They've called on students from Soweto campus, Doorfontein, Banting, as well as all the other TVET colleges to come out in support of their call for a national shutdown. What I do understand from the SRC, who've just spoken to us a few moments ago, they're currently on campus here at the Kingsway campus. They're building momentum, and that they say private security have come out intimidating them. We know that they plan to intensify their protest later this afternoon, taking it back to the streets like we saw them yesterday. Meanwhile, in Braamfontein at WITS University, students there have carried on as normal. We haven't seen any sign of protest yet this afternoon or in the morning. So far, it's been very, very quiet. There are no police and yalas in sight. We've just seen one or two officers just driving through the area. Yesterday, at the same time, we had seen those scenes of students taking to the streets of Braamfontein, closing down businesses, calling on the business and the economic activities to stop and to also join in on their protest. We also saw yesterday one student being shot allegedly by police officers. We know that she is in a stable condition at the Mill Park Hospital. She is waiting to be interviewed by police. From what we understand, the police have said that no shots were fired. From their knowledge, there was only the use of water cannons on students, that they did not fire any shots with a live ammunition or a rubber bullet. We also know that 4 other Wits University students are currently at the Johannesburg Magistrates Court. They were arrested during the protest action yesterday. For now, the situation remains calm. Students here at UJ are on the ground in campus right now, building momentum, and they will take to the streets later in the day, bringing their demands to the streets of Auckland Park. That's it for me for now. Back to you in studio.
Thanks very much, Hasina, for that report. University of the Free State Vice Rector, Professor Francis Peterson, is of the view a new model should be found to address student funding. He says this week's meeting with Higher Education Minister Dr. Bladen Zimande should come up with that solution. Yesterday, the university's Student Representative Council demanded Peterson's immediate resignation. Our reporter Ishmael Modiba is monitoring the main campus of the University of the Free State, the Central University of Technology and the Mateo TVET College in Bloemfontein. Let's cross to Ishmael now. Thanks very much for joining us, Ishmael. What is the current situation in Bloemfontein as we speak?
Well, Nobu, the situation is quite different as compared to yesterday, particularly at where we are at the Central University of Technology and the University of the Free State, where it was fairly quiet in terms of activity. There were no demonstration, no students, except some of the few cars that are doing business with the institution. You'd see that cars maybe doing the deliveries were able to go inside, both here at the Central University and as well as at the University of the Free State. Today, as you can see just behind me, you can see the entrance. Cars are being let in and out, and even some of the students are able to go in and out. That is the situation here at the Central University as well as at the University of the Free State. But the situation at the Motel TVET, that's where we saw in the morning some of the students were holding their demonstrations outside the premises, but they as well by now they have already dispersed. So it is fairly quiet, and with the leadership of both the SRC of the University of the Free State and the CUT, they are saying they're still in contact or in meetings with the management just to find a way forward. But the students, they've already made it clear that they will continue with their actions until their demands are met.
And Ishmael, in terms of the Vice Rector, what's happening there? The students demanding that he resign with immediate effect. What's his stance and what's happening in that regard?
I'm battling to hear. Can you just repeat that question?
Yes,
again?
just tell us about the Vice Rector, Francis Peterson. The students had requested that he resign with immediate effect. What's the latest on that? What has he said in response to that?
Well, yesterday when we spoke to the president of the SRC at the University of the Free State, that is Katleho Lecho, he spoke about the request of Professor Francis Peterson to resign, because they are saying he's not in touch with their needs. They are saying that they have been sidelined on the issues that affect them. But that is the request, or that is the demand that they have made, to say the rector must resign. But interestingly enough, yesterday during one of our virtual meeting, one of the important lines that I picked up from the rector was that its time is overdue for the country to sit and reflect on the funding model that is particularly affecting the universities. He says time is due that they look at this, because you know that every January, these are the kind of, or every time when the school higher learning institutions open, these are the kind of demonstration and protest that we see. So he was saying that they need to come up with a tangible solution so that these things of students' fees and be unable to register, it's something that is a thing of the past.
Thank you very much, Ishmael, for that report. Ishmael Modiba reporting there from the University of the Free State. SABC News continues to monitor developments at the Kwaketom Tandayo Royal Palace at Nongoma in northern KwaZulu-Natal in the run-up to the